our project, which explores how a landscape can function as a rehabilitation infrastructure for wounded United States veterans. Our inspiration comes from SOE historical site use, training military for combat, which is now repurposed to train returning wounded veterans for new realities. A wounded veteran must face an entirely different reality once the rehabilitation process has begun. Doug Pringle, a wounded veteran of the Vietnam War and president of Disabled Sports USA Far West, says, you start thinking about what you can't do. Gee, I can't run anymore. Your self-image is kind of shattered. You know, I'm a gung-ho soldier. Now, all of a sudden, I'm disabled. 15% of the United States has at least one kind of disability, 9% a physical disability, and 1% are wounded veterans. This new identity and the conventional indoors rehabilitation process can be difficult, painful, and depressing. Existing resources for the benefit of veteran rehabilitation have an underutilized aspect, which is recreational rehabilitation. Recreational rehabilitation, especially out-of-doors recreational rehabilitation, has a proven track record in the medical community, but is rarely a part of Veterans Affairs Hospital programs. SOE's proximity to Veteran Affairs hospitals makes it an ideal location for a rehabilitation center. A recreational rehab center at SOE could become a chapter of Disabled Sports USA, a national adaptive sports network. Many chapters of DSUSA offer events and programs for veterans to participate in sport. However, a large-scale landscape and facilities devoted specifically to veteran recreational rehabilitation is without precedent. With such a facility, inclusion of the disabled and able-bodied communities would be a perfect opportunity for growth and expansion of veteran recreational rehab beyond conventional hospital room techniques. So we're talking about sports that would be outside. And now is the optimal time to build such a facility. Within this decade, increased interest in adaptive sport has led to explosive growth at the local, national, and international levels. One example is the growth of adaptive rowing since its inclusion in the World Rowing Championships in 2002.
So our project deals with a lot of complex systems that currently exist on the site. So we first want to explain to you what exists right now on the site and how we're using it in part of our strategy. Contamination is shown in red. It's pretty widespread, and it occurs both in the building footprints and in dumping sites across the site. The dominant site ecology is open grasslands and forested wetlands. Grassland in tan, forested wetland in green. And there's huge runway, partially deconstructed, especially in the south, but largely still usable with a little bit of repair. The site is built over wetlands and groundwater, shown in this dotted blue, that still mostly exist, mostly less than 1 meter below the site surface level. The site exists, as we know, with the intersection of 3 towns, Weymouth to the north, Rockland to the southeast, and Abington to the southwest. And all these towns have been affected because of the site over the years. This is our site in 2020. We're using the runway, largely keeping its form, and using it for our recreational rehabilitation programs. We're adding additional bike paths, shown in black, and the goal of these bike paths is to create added infrastructure as well as connect to roads and walkways in the surrounding communities for site access. We're excavating a small water course adjacent to the runways and expanding wetlands to the south. And we're adding a sports infrastructure with a graded slope for slope-based activities, a velodrome and a track, as well as tennis courts, basketball courts, and a skate park. We've expanded habitats and tried to strengthen it and improving the diverse site ecology by creating connections where they're disparate over here. We've tried to strengthen them, connect them, and also connect them to the outside disparate habitats and communities such as the forested wetland and the grassland. And this should also increase and improve the wildlife corridors across the site and the region.
In order to take advantage of the entire site, remediation has a special importance to create a safe environment for our recreational rehabilitation program. So SOE, as you can see in the map, has several contaminated sites that are highlighted in red. Most of the contaminants are concentrated under former building footprints and in the soil and in the groundwater. Two systems will address them. The new water basin and the wetland expansion, they are both fed by groundwater, will inevitably encounter plumes of contaminated groundwater. And to address this problem, we are using floating wetlands. And for the building footprint here, we will plant specific plant communities to remove specific contaminants, as shown in the list, and follow sufficient contaminant absorption. And these communities will be removed and replanted.
At the point in the remediation process where human use is again safe, we will build our programmatic elements. We have identified recreational rehabilitation activities that are very beneficial and take into account the site characteristics as they exist now and as we'll build them. Long-range activities from 1,000 to 3,000 meters in range, such as Nordic skiing, cycling, and running, require almost no slope and can easily exist on using runways and constructed bike paths. By varying the complexity of these paths, we create challenge and encourage physical rehabilitation at all levels of ability. Water, as Aidan mentioned, provides a planar surface and a buoyant environment for exceptionally effective forms of rehab, such as kayaking or adaptive rowing. By using the cut from the watercourse to construct a small hill, we can provide training for activities that require greater slope but shorter distance, such as mountain biking and alpine skiing.
And our landscape provides experiences for all abilities. An able-bodied person can climb a peak and look across the landscape, or reach down and touch the water. But not all people can. And our landscape provides experience for people with and without disabilities. Our paths, as shown in the section, carry the users through a variety of landscape experiences, near and far from the water, for example, or through grasslands and forest edges, or above and below existing grades, to have experiences that people with disabilities usually cannot have. And depending on how fast we can move through the landscape, by foot or by wheel, for example, the cadence of the experiences varies. And to create that landscape for better recreational rehabilitation will take a long time. Through this evolution, the site has, as shown in the maps, stronger connections with the communities associated with it, and creating a greater permeability. Over 10 years, as shown in the timeline, we will have stronger community connections. We will expand habitats and wetlands here, and remediate contamination.
So these renderings can give you an idea of what the site will look like in 2020 across the different aspects of the site, from hardscape to the habitats, and also throughout the seasons, showing some of the types of programs that we'd like to offer to disabled veterans.
And from the period between 2020 and 2050, so we can really reach its full potential for community inclusion. In addition to working closely with VA hospital systems and becoming a chapter of Disabled Sports USA, so we could expand to be an unprecedented combination of a veteran recreational rehabilitation center and a Paralympic training center. SOE proves its value on the national level for veteran rehabilitation and adaptive sport. And as this happens, other sites with similar objectives may be established in the United States within hotspots of adaptive sport and veteran communities. Let me just move over here so you guys can actually see what we're talking about here. These sites could offer year-round rehab throughout the seasons, recreational and training infrastructure. Such centers could become powerful vehicles for the promotion and expansion of adaptive sport in the United States. All countries shown here in this world map are members of FISA, the world rowing governing body, just one of many possible international adaptive sport communities.